Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. All right, let's take a look at what we are doing today for reading. Okay, so these are your directions for today's reading. Now, you should know, first of all, that Mrs. Rodas is going to do a second follow-up lesson on perspective and point of view in our morning meeting this morning. So if you're watching this before the morning meeting, you probably want to wait to do this after the morning meeting because Mrs. Rodas is going to give a second lesson on point of view here. Okay, if you've already been there, so you're doing this later, you've already seen both of Miss Rodas's lessons, so you are good to go. So you can go ahead and start up. Now, the first thing you need to do today is read Chapter 7 of The Castle in the Attic. So today we're reading Chapter 7 of The Castle in the Attic. You can follow along as I read aloud, or you can read yourself right there. Okay, so read all Chapter 7. It's a little longer one today, but it's a good one. Okay. Now, what we're going to do and what you should think about while you're doing this is, again, what point of view and whose perspective is this story told in? Now, yesterday we talked about that Castle in the Attic is written from a third-person point of view. Now, which means that it's like a narrator telling us the story, but we generally follow William around. Okay. But it's important to think when you read a story too, like, okay, how could the story change if we change the point of view or perspective? And that's exactly what we're going to do with today's lesson. For today's lesson, I want you thinking, well, how would certain parts of this chapter have changed if it was Mrs. Phillips telling the story and not this third-person narrator? Okay. So let's look at the directions here. So, Castle in the Attic, Chapter 7, point of view, writing. So in Chapter 7, William acts very sneaky, controlling and selfish in his efforts to keep Mrs. Phillips from leaving. For this project, you are going to think about each section of the chapter given and rewrite it from Mrs. Phillips' perspective. Use information from the text, as well as what you know, to make inferences about how Mrs. Phillips might be feeling and what she might be thinking. Use complete sentences. The first one has been done for you. We've actually done the first few for you. Okay. So you're going to be given a passage, a section from this chapter, and it's your job to rewrite it in first-person perspective from Mrs. Phillips' point of view. Now, do we know what exactly Mrs. Phillips is thinking in all of these? No, we don't, because the story is not told from her perspective. However, we can use our inferencing skills and common sense and what we know about the character and the background to kind of give, okay, this is what I best guess, this is what my best guess would be as to what Mrs. Phillips is thinking, and write it as Mrs. Phillips. So let's take a look at a couple examples here. Page 58. So it says William's point of view from the text. It says, page 58, it was almost the end of April. Mrs. Phillips would be leaving in a week. So that's kind of what William is thinking in this part. So now we got to think, okay, if we're Mrs. Phillips, how would I tell that? And so instead of William telling that, how would Mrs. Phillips tell that? So an example of point of view could be something like, I can't believe I only have a week left here with William. I hope he's going to be okay when I'm gone. So notice it's telling the same thing, basically. It's talking about Mrs. Phillips leaving. But in this section, we're telling how Mrs. Phillips would tell that from her point of view, from her mind. Okay, not William's mind, from her mind. Okay. So let's take a look at the second one. It said she had attended William's meets ever since he started gymnastics at the age of 6. Okay, so we know she'd attended William's meets ever since he started gymnastics at the age of 6. At this point of the story on page 59 there, well, what would Mrs. Phillips be thinking? How would she tell that part of the story? Well, how's she feeling? What's she thinking? Okay, I mean, she's been attending his meets ever since the age of 6. Well, she might think something like, hey, I'm sad that I'm going to miss his meets, but I know he can do it, right? Because that shows that Mrs. Phillips, well, what I know about her, she believes in William and she knows he can do it, right? But she has also said that she's going to miss him. So she kind of tells that. We can have her retell that in that section. The third one, okay, page 60. Her smile was so wide, it seemed to spread from one corner of the gym to the other. So this was in the chapter after William completed his gymnastics routine, right? So he looks at her and he sees that her smile was so wide, it seemed to spread from one corner of the gym to the other. So now we're going to rewrite that section from Mrs. Phillips' point of view. So what if Mrs. Phillips was telling the story, what would she say? What if she was narrating it, what would she think or what would she say? So how about something like, he did it. I'm so proud of him. Right? Or like, I watched William finish his gymnastics routine and he did it. I'm so proud of him. Anything like that, you're rewriting from her point of view. Okay? So again, you have to imagine that you get in your head. And when we're writing now, when we rewrite it, we're going to rewrite it from first person perspective from Mrs. Phillips' point of view. So you should use words like, since it's first person, like I, me, we, right? And use that when you're writing. So this next one, which I'm not going to do, but you're going to fill out the rest of these, okay, on your own. Now, it says, let's see, page 60. You should come to every practice, Mrs. Phillips, Robert said, still looking at William. William only gives us his best when you are here. So I'm going to think, okay, how might Mrs. Phillips tell that if she was telling the story? Huh? So I might think, and again, there's not a right or wrong answer, but you just have to think, okay, using my inferencing skills, what would make sense? So again, I'm Miss Phillips telling us this section of the story. So I could say, William's coach told me I should come to every practice. To every practice. It makes me feel so warm and fuzzy inside to know that William does his best for me. So again, I took that little scenario and I rewrote it as if Mrs. Phillips was going to write it. So you are going to do that with these other sections. Okay, and it just has to be rewrite in a sentence or two. Just rewrite it from that perspective. Just so you know, like this, the bottom of this page, it carries over. It might carry over onto the second page. Like that's all one, right? Even though it's different box on different pages, that's one. And this is one as well. So just if it starts to get a little longer and bleed over onto the next page, that's the same one. You just look at the page number there. Okay, we're going to take this off. You're not going to have to do that. All right. So that's all we're doing here. We're rewriting from Mrs. Phillips' point of view these sections of the story, really focusing on that first person narration. Okay, you got to get creative. Got to get outside the narrator's head, get outside your head, get inside Mrs. Phillips' head to retell these sections. Can't wait to see what you are able to come up with. I know you can do it, and it's going to be awesome.